sheep. Hi, little sheep. They always think people are good. They always come running. They think maybe they're going to get fed. Probably. Oh, they had a good life. And they think you're the nicest person in the world because you take care of them till you eat them. See if we have machines that do all the work. Because you see, there's a place to put the soap there and a place to rub the clothes to get the dirt out and wash, rinse, all that kind of stuff. Imagine how much work that was. Hopefully you didn't have many clothes, and you wore them like 2 or 3 days in a row. Because man, big family and you're washing clothes like that. The cut trees smell good, as you know. Extra plus. Nice word. Don't know what it means. Hello, people. It's a quiet, sunny morning. A little bit chilly, about 17 degrees C, and it's going to be a lovely day. I'm not sure if I'm going to do this now, but I've been thinking about othering and inside groups, outside groups, however you define them, whatever, wherever you lie on the spectrum of politics or whatever. And I was remembering some books I've read on mafia and organized crime groups in Colombia, in Italy, in the United States, in England, all over the world. And also about, religious fanaticism, ISIS, things like that. And it seems to me that these kinds of groups perfectly encapsulate this idea of us and them, omerta, this kind of insider knowledge, whether you're as passive as a Quaker or as crazy as ISIS. And within these groups, some of them are cults, some of them are just, religious or political ideologies. You have, very well-defined rules, norms of behavior. You can easily be ostracized if you break the rules. They have harsh punishment for people who go against the norms or the rules of the group. They're usually in competition with other groups that are similar to them, but it can be more violent, or it can be slightly more peaceful, depending. If you're two different Yakuza groups, and one's from Kansai going into Tokyo. I was watching some HBO series on that. Tokyo Vice.
てめえでやったことはよ、てめえでケツ拭けよ。組売るような真似して、ただで済むと思ってんのか。あ、組。
親父はてめえの島守るのが精一杯で先が見えてね。
戸沢、お前に何を約束した。
希望ですよ。くだらねえ極道のしがらみに親父がしがみついてる間に戸沢はどんどん攻めてってる。北朝鮮からのシャブのルートもとっくに抑えてる。
俺に奴と同じことをしろってのか。
じゃあどうやって生き残るんですか？俺たちのもんかすめてくの親父は指くわえて見てるだけだ。任侠なんて古くせえもんしがみついてたらあとは破滅しかねえ。どうするつもりですか？やれよ自分の手で。
いや、やるのはこいつだ。やれ。
So of course the local crime family doesn't want the guy from Kansai, from Osaka, coming up and taking his territory, right? These are always territorial. A group tends to live in a fairly defined region. They don't go outside their region. If it's Calabria, if it's Napoli, if it's I'm in New Jersey or in Manhattan or whatever. They tend to be, these days, hierarchical. They have fairly simplistic structures for their hierarchy. They're usually patriarchal these days, of course. Yeah, some are really violent, some aren't. But, if you think about it, sometimes I feel the coded language with some of the more articulate, intellectual, palatable, fashionable right-wing people, that at the end of the day, they really do want to have a very well-defined, well-bordered community where they can live according to their own manners and norms, codes of ethics, moral sensibilities, and so on. And that, it's not about inclusivity or about really thinking about anything outside the group that much, except in terms of what it might need to do to acquire resources to exist. You can go from very simple communities to very complex ones that would require global trade. So I'm thinking of like farming communities in Pennsylvania, even the Mormons in a sense, to groups that want to compete on a global scale. Let's say the United States, a certain kind of Republican, they believe that they still should have a global footprint to protect their community, to feel secure. That might mean going to war abroad. Some are not like that, of course. They're like, foreign wars are stupid, they waste money, they're useless. Why get involved with, these other countries' business if they don't threaten us? We don't care. But imagine if you grew up in a place like that, in a community like that, and let's say you're the daughter of one of the underbosses of a group in a village somewhere, and you're living according to the code. Everything's going okay. Sometimes, squabbles and fights break out. People get hurt, but in general, people get over on the people they need to exploit to survive. If it's not a criminal gang, it's not like that. They're living within the law, and they just want to be left alone to farm or whatever. But if you're one of these more extreme groups, obviously it's more difficult to leave. It's more difficult for these groups to live within the law of the nation or the state. They tend to have their own, rule of law that's outside of the normal, what we consider the normal civil law. And, like Godfather 3 or whatever. You send your daughter off to college because maybe you think that, yeah, let's give this woman an education. I think a lot of times these groups would keep their women protected and disconnected from the greater society because they don't want them to be corrupted by immoral ideas. So if you sent your daughter off to one of these schools, there's a huge risk that she would be influenced by her education and she'd come back a completely different person. And then what do you do? What do you do with her? Exile her? In some Islamic groups, there's honor killings and so on. And there have been things like that in other religious groups, Hinduism and also Christianity. But there's this huge risk that if you let these people get anywhere near a so-called liberal education, especially the way we know it now, academia now is kind of batshite crazy, in my opinion. But I don't know. I'm not in school now. But you send your kid away to these places, and when they come back, they're not, adhering to the group's norms anymore. They're like off in some other world, concerned with other things. And they might want to, leave the group, leave the cult, renounce their religion, move on to something else. And of course, it's a tragedy, and it's scary, and it's heartbreaking for the people involved. And sometimes it's violent, and it's very, it's a rough breakup. So I think a lot of times when people on the right, I'm not sure, maybe you can enlighten me, think about winning. They just want to win the culture war completely, which I guess would involve setting up a community that was completely divorced from the broader community, because how can you protect your people, the way they think, from outside influences? I have friends who have spouses who believe in demons, and anything outside their worldview is considered demonic. I mean, really seriously demonic, definitively. Like Satan is working in the world, doing all kinds of nasty, mischievous, and horrific things all the time. And I sometimes wonder, do they think I'm satanic? Do they think I'm possessed by demons because I don't adhere to their philosophy or their beliefs? And it worries me, because it's like, hey, look, I'm just your friend. Remember me? I'm just this guy you grew up with. I'm not the devil. But you never know. I mean, when you are a member of a tight community like that, yeah, you feel safe and protected, and you feel like you know how to behave, and you're not challenged by thoughts and ideas that go against the grain of your community's beliefs. So at the end of the day, if you're that insular, if you're living in that narrow confine within community, it makes it really difficult to connect with outsiders, I think. Other than perhaps, you go on a trade mission, or you're a missionary, or you want to take a vacation to Mazatlan or something for some crazy reason, or you have to go across state lines to to do some business or something. But in general, you don't want to be a part of the outside world. It's threatening. It's dangerous. It's 2022. We complain about flying like that Louis C.K. thing, and yet we have that wonderful, miraculous technology that makes the world smaller. Maybe people are nostalgic for a time when it took a whole day to walk to the castle for some ceremony. And they took their mule and they walked the castle and participated in the ceremony and then walked back to their village. And the world was small and easy to handle. When people were illiterate, I'm studying the 30 Years' War now. So I got a couple books and I'm listening to a podcast series that's really interesting. And one thing that struck me about it right from the beginning is that this was a religiously fueled conflict between the Reformation, the Reformers, the Protestants, Lutherans, and people like that, and the Catholics. And it was the first time when normal people would just get extremely passionate about, fighting for various princes. They didn't have to work too hard to get them to volunteer because they were so passionate about their beliefs. And I think of Vikings and Valhalla. If you die in battle, you go to Valhalla. And the same thing, I guess, within parts of Islam. If you live a certain way, if you die a certain way, you're guaranteed things in heaven. If you think that this is all there is, my walk, these trees, my breath, my body, my brain, my relationships, my silly little life, you would probably think, wow, this is kind of sacred in a way. It's very special, precious, fragile, transient, ephemeral. And you'd say, well, I better make the best of everything I can and learn as much as I can while I'm here because this is it. Maybe if I had that feeling that, if I die heroically in battle, I'm going to inherit all these things in heaven. I'm going to be really close to the creator of the universe, or something like that. God created man in his image, and here I am, and I'm going to be sitting with God or enveloped by godliness or shaking hands with Jesus or whatever. If I live right and die right, with the right things in my heart, with the right beliefs in my mind, I have eternity, everlasting life, What's not attractive about that? And then maybe if I thought my group was really, really like David Koresh kind of correct, and the whole outside world was oppressing me.
Straight white male, hate myself. Mad that my skin's so pale, got white privilege so I cannot fail. The world told me I'm evil still. I break the law but I escaped the jail. My diet only mayonnaise and kale. I went to school and I pay my taxes. I used good grammar, I'm bad as hell. I'm not a Nazi, I like black people, black Jesus, black Santa, black coffee. I'm not a racist, I like it.
Some people in the States feel I'm a white American man with a job and 2 cars and 2 kids and lots of guns, but I'm oppressed. I'm an oppressed minority in my country. Everybody's out to get me. But you have your faith, and that transcends everything. And you have your group, and they understand your faith. Nobody else gets it. It would be a little bit easier to dehumanize people. To say the outside group, them, aren't us, and so they're hardly even human. Why would we care, you know? I pray every day for people dying in Yemen and starving in Africa, but I don't care. They're not my people. They don't believe what my grandfather believed, you know. I know what the Bible says. I know what my holy book says. It's the truth. I know how to interpret it because I've read a lot of theological books and apologetics and whatnot. So I know how to interpret it, and I know what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's evil, and it's black and white to me. So the other people don't matter. So if I have a feud between the Hatfields and I kill one of their people, I understand they might have to retaliate, but you know, honor demanded it. I had to do it. Our people are like that. We don't take any shit. And when my daughter comes back from college and she's a different person, she's not my daughter anymore. Anything can happen to her. I don't care. She's one of them. She's not in the group anymore. She's not my daughter. You've seen that in a million movies and books, right? Novels. You're not my son anymore, you know. I disinherit you. You're no longer in the fold. You're an outsider, ostracized, cast out. And this is the way it's been probably all along, and especially since we scaled up to civilization level, had enough commodities in excess, you know, to wield power and hyper agency over large groups of people. You know, when we could control the atoms, the resources, the grains, the whatever, the oil. So, you know, there's a certain kind of person that can broaden their field of compassion to insects and bacteria, maybe not bacteria, animals, trees, the environment, ecosystem. They love the ocean, they love the fish, they love the dolphins, they love the whales. They're tree huggers. They see Japanese people as human beings, just like themselves. They just speak a different language and have different traditions and have a different history and sing different songs and whatnot. And they can say, oh God, it just makes me sick to see those kids in Yemen and to think about this conflict between Israeli Jews and Palestinians. It's just a tragedy, and I hate to see it, and I want that to stop. Could education help stop that? So you're thinking about a certain kind of education that would make people expand their circle of value and sacredness and compassion. And the other side is saying, no, 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 you can't do that. You destroy everything that we believe in, that we hold sacred and moral and right. The world isn't about everything for everybody, you know. Then climate change comes along and pandemics come along and it challenges everything. So you see in the pandemic different types of people reacting to it in different ways. If you're left and anti-vax, or if you're right and anti-vax, it's slightly different, right? You think about attacking a pandemic by not giving, if the vaccine's wonderful and really does save lots of lives, and probably it does, why wouldn't you give it to everybody on the planet right away and then pay the drug companies later? You might think like that. Other people would say, hell no, they're for us. Give it to give it to Donald Trump first and his family, because they're, you know, or whoever, because they're our leader, and then give it to the insider people, the people that matter, and then later on, if there's some left over, let those other people have it, you know. They don't understand that the pandemic is something that doesn't have a culture. It's just a virus. And ideas can be like that too, but whatever. So, You have wars, you have climate change, right? It affects all systems on the planet, and all systems on the planet are complex systems, so they're highly unpredictable. You need to do a lot of work to have some kind of probabilistic idea of what might happen to a certain degree. It's really complex. People who want to be black and white, they don't want to think about these complex things. That's ridiculous. That's what God sorts out. God will handle all of that stuff. All you have to do is act right, you know. So here we are. We're in this situation where I don't think the world's tribes can cohere at scale to solve global problems that affect everything, all life on Earth. They don't even want to believe that, and I'm a tree hugger and I'm insane because I'm even talking about it. To them, they think I'm a nutcase, right? If you talk about preponderance of evidence and you keep ignoring the data because you don't care about the data, the evidence, it doesn't matter to you. It's meaningless. It only matters if it confirms what I believe. And that's logical in a way. That's perfectly rational in a way, if you're defending something you believe. Again, Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt, however, I should really learn the proper way to pronounce his last name. But it lays a lot of this out, but he's not the only writer who grapples with this. Science, various domains of science do, and philosophy, and political philosophy, and ethics, and so on. And it's been like that for thousands of years, basically. You could say that Jesus Christ was a moral philosopher, maybe. And you can't say it's debatable, you know, who developed the Christian canon. Was it done in the 19th century or a long, long time ago, in the 3rd century, or Eastern Roman Empire or whatever? Was it the Western, you know? It doesn't matter. The way of approaching a religion changes over time, but that book is still there. And the beliefs are still held to be eternal, without a beginning, without an end. Absolute, right? If you're not an absolutist, it's hard to stay in a tribe like that. On the other hand, people can see that it's important to have social and cultural norms, it's important to have rules, it's important to have ethics and moral values and things like that. And I think almost everybody understands that, the importance of those things. But, you know, if you're going to disown your daughter because she went to school and learned something about the world that you don't like, and that still happens all over the place all the time, I think it's going to be impossible for the world to cohere around complex issues like pandemics and climate change. We're doomed. But if hyper agents, if powerful people, and now I'm sliding over to the monarchy kind of thing, but I don't think of it in the same terms. If powerful people understood these complex challenges and had the ability to go about doing something about it, and they decided that they were going to throw all of their resources behind solving a problem that was global, maybe they could achieve it, but they would have pushback from common people all the time, because basic, you know, everyday folks would come up with millions of conspiracy theories to say why this powerful cabal of individuals with all the agency, all the resources, is out to kill them all, to destroy their way of life, to ruin their religion, to wreck their tribe, you know, to take down their gang. So the Tozawa gang is up in Tokyo, and all they want to do is help fix things for the for the people who are getting taxed by the gangsters. But the other team says, no, we're not going to let you do that. Even if it's better for the customer, the people getting ripped off. And so we're stuck in this thing. I don't think machines are going to fix it. A lot of people just don't want to know things. That's why I talk about willful ignorance a lot, because don't talk to me about that. I don't want to hear that. Delete you from Facebook, delete you from all my social media, stop talking to you. I have friends like that who were really tight for like 40 years, but after a while they drift more and more into their tribe, into their insulated group. They feel safer there. They feel they can make sense of the world better in that environment, and they feel you just want to, pop their bubble, wreck their world. Why should I listen to you, William T? You're trying to wreck my world. I sympathize with that. I can't fault them because that's their thing. And if they want to feel safe, or if their vanity precludes them from seeing anything that reflects badly on themselves, their ego, the way they think, then that's what they have to do. So there's no way I'm going to convince anybody of anything if I even wanted to try, but I'd like to have a conversation with people because I'm curious. I want to know more about what they think, and I want to hear it from them. I want them to tell me. Set me straight. And so I read these books and listen to these people and try to understand why they care so much. Because when I was younger and traveled a lot, I loved Balinese culture. I loved Mexican culture. I loved Japanese culture and so on. And over time, they got more Americanized, at least I think they did. And tourism and globalization and technology and social media kind of wrecked the nostalgic version that I have of those places and their cultures that I loved. I'm a Japanophile, can't get enough. And then you finally realize that the Japan you think you're in love with doesn't exist. Maybe it never did, or maybe it just disappeared. And then you kind of understand what the right-wingers in Japan are on about. They don't want their world to disappear. The samurai are gone. All these values and whatnot. So yeah, when you go to Bali, to Ubud, and it's just a tourist attraction, you buy a ticket to see the ceremonies that once were sacred. Or you go to the third mesa in Arizona or wherever. And the difference between knowing a family there and going to a ceremony that you paid a ticket to, it can be heartbreaking depending on how you look at it. So yeah, what's the real Paris? You don't know the real Paris. The real Paris doesn't exist anymore. I don't want to get caught up in nostalgia, but I want to know what these people think about how important their world is to them and whether or not they think there are larger issues, broader problems having to do with health. And I mean a broad idea of health, that we need to include everything and everybody in if we're going to fix it, if we're going to make it possible for their tribe, their group to survive generation after generation. Or if they're more apocalyptic, end of days, that's just the way it is. It is written. God wants it that way. I have dominion over everything. We're going to exploit it for our own tribe until it's ruined. That's a multipolar tragedy of the commons. And the person who waxes on most eloquently about these things, in my opinion, is Daniel Schmachtenberger, if you want to listen to what he has to say. He's easily found. So that's what I think about. If I was going to disown my daughter because she came back from a college education and wasn't the same sweet Mormon girl anymore or whatever. I don't know. I couldn't do that, but I know a lot of people who could. All right, thanks for listening, and please comment. Give me your ideas. Don't be shy. And I'll talk to you soon. William T. Out. I was thinking another thing about the daughter, disowned daughter. I remember listening to a podcast about technology and labor-saving devices in the home. In particular, washing machines for clothing, washers and dryers, which freed up a lot of time for women. They had other things to do and think about besides washing clothes all day. And kitchen appliances, dishwashers. Imagine if you spent all day doing housework and taking care of children. You wouldn't have a lot of time necessarily to occupy yourself with other ideas and thoughts and things to do. Unless you had a staff. If you're upper class, you have a staff and they do all the work, and then you can focus on social things. But yeah, so if you have a traditional society and you have that labor to preoccupy women with, they do traditional work, then the men can go off and do their manly things. And I want to talk about masculinity one of these days, what I think that is, but anyway. And the women will focus on the family. You know, family values, what are those? Who defines it? You know, obviously your culture. But yeah, labor saving. So if nobody has to wash the dishes or care for the children or do anything, any work whatsoever, it frees us up to be what? What are we going to do with ourselves? And if you're a really trad person, traditional, what are you going to do? You know, memorize the debate esoteric passages in the Quran or the Talmud or the New Testament, or, you know, I don't know. What are you going to do with yourself? We're passionate beings, so what are we going to do? Are we going to do good? One would hope so. Home sweet home.